Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. I thought I would sit down and do another video for you guys and gals. Let me get a sip of my water first. Get my beautiful radio voice going and let's talk about this. All right, sugar addiction is not real. And any references when people make that statement, they will always refer to some rodent studies in dopamine. And I'm like, you can't say sugar across the board was even causing that response in rodents. In those rat and mice studies, you can't. You need to name the specific substance they used. Does that make sense? So it's usually sucrose specifically, which the reason they're then saying sugar is because when most of you go to the store to buy something called sugar, you're going, oh, let me get this Imperial Pure Cane White. That is what you're thinking of sugar. Yes, that is specifically a substance called sucrose, known as table sugar or just slang for sugar. But that doesn't apply to all sugars. Even when you read the sugars on a label, a nutrition label, that doesn't always mean the same thing. That just means any simple carbohydrate. That's it. It doesn't matter what the chemical composition of it is. Sucrose is specifically 50% glucose, 50% fructose with a bond between them, right? It's a very specific substance. The issue is that's not how it works in humans. It's not addictive. What we are often addicted to is hyperpalatable calorie-dense foods. Now, before I even get into sugar's potential contribution to obesity, to insulin resistance, any of that, those are separate topics. But what people are addicted, keep in mind, you cannot store it as subcutaneous fat. Certain refined sugars have a slight predisposition over other carbohydrates to store as liver fat specifically. But you can't see that. That is internal, way underneath all of your muscles, around your organs. You cannot get to it. It is not what you see under your skin. Again, this little tiny bit of fat I still have on my forearms, that is subcutaneous. No carbohydrate nor sugar store there. Just be aware of that. That's all from fat that you eat. But that's been proven in the lab, in humans, in our species, Homo sapien. So when we're dealing with the what people are addicted to, they're addicted to, again, hyperpalatable calorie-dense foods. That is incidentally what's largely causing obesity. But to be hyperpalatable, people say, well, sugar would contribute to that. Yes, absolutely. But it is not required. Okay, when we get that hyperpalatability, that means excessive flavor. So it hits our taste buds in such a way that it makes us hungry. And when we eat it, we want to eat more of it. So hyperpalatability tastes so good that we want to eat more of it. It's two combinations that do that. And fat is almost always required. Like sugar and sweet is almost never hyperpalatable to the same degree when no fat is added. But it also doesn't have to be there. So usually you're looking at fatty plus sweet. So an example, ice cream, right? We got a ton of fat, ton of saturated fat, combined with a bunch of refined sugar. Okay? Delicious. Another example, cake. Cake is extremely high. So are pies. They are excessively high in fat. Those are very high fat foods. They're loaded full of oils, full of vegetable oil, full of butter, all these things. And then we throw a bunch of sweet on top of it. Makes it hyperpalatable. Okay? We're usually aware of this. Yeah, we know what these street foods are. We think of them as junk food. If they're hyperpalatable and calorie dense, we call it junk food. That's the slang term for it. The clinical terms would be hyperpalatable, calorie dense foods. Okay. What else is hyperpalatable like that? Anything that combines salty with fatty. Cheese. How about pizza? We got cheese with all sorts of extra salts and salt. Oh man, we got all that cheese fat, that saturated fat. Then we throw a little bit of extra nice cooked olive oil on it, some spices. Then all that salt. That is really salty salt, salty cheese. Explodes in your mouth. French fries, salty and fatty. A hamburger, salty and fatty. Hot dog, salty and fatty. See a pattern here? These are the foods we do that. They're calorie dense because they have enormous amounts of calories. Well, fat always has the highest calorie density. refined sugars behind that, and then other refined carbs behind that, right? There's your calorie density. All those foods fall in that category. Therefore, that is what we binge on. So when people say, well, I'm addicted to sugar, no. And if it's a drink, you're just choosing to drink that because you're possibly thirsty. If you were to add artificial sweetener like this to water, you would chug this at just the rate that you chug soda. It's not the sugar in it, it's the fact that you're thirsty, you need something to drink, and it happens to taste good. You're never going to hit the same calorie load that you will on these other foods. You just cannot be done without the presence of fat. It just won't happen. You can't. Again, look at your couple cans of soda, or whatever you guys call them in other places, pop and all that. It's always sounded weird to me the first time I heard that. I was like, what the hell did you just call it? I was visiting up north the first time when I was younger, like Michigan or something, and they were calling it pop, and I had never heard this before. All right, to each their own. But I digress. Or in the UK, they call them fizzy drinks, mate. Oh, you going to drink that fizzy drink? I lived there for 3 years, as you guys know. So you're still not going to get the same calorie density. You're not addicted to the sugar. You're addicted to hyperpalatability. Okay? And we as a society, we're prone to that. It's because we didn't have these foods historically. These are the foods that trigger our survival instincts in starvation situations. Because when we were starving and in famines, those are the foods that would keep you alive. They had the most calorie density. You'd be able to eat the most of them to keep from starving to death. So if we found them, we gorged on them. Hey, this is kicking your survival instincts back in, except that we're not starving. It's not a good combination. But we're not addicted to the sugar, and I'll prove it. If you were addicted to the sugar, I could give you a dry bowl of table sugar. And I've always said, let me put a spoon in it. No, let's not even have the spoon. Because if you were really addicted to sugar, I could leave a bowl or a plate covered in just dry table sugar. That Imperial Pure Cane, like that Imperial White, man. Good stuff right there. Right? I could pour that on a plate and you would just lick it off. Every time you walked by the table, and you would never get sick of it, because you do not get sick of something you're addicted to. You don't get tired of it. Like, it might make you feel bad, but you'll never get rid of it. You'll always have that urge. Like, every time you walk by that plate of just dry sugar, you're going to be tempted to just lick it. If I gave you no utensils or anything to eat it with. And if I did give you a utensil, you would eat the whole bowl in one sitting every time I provided it every single day. Okay? So anyone who says that they're addicted to sugar, try the sugar test. Go buy you a few pounds of Imperial White from the grocery store, dump it on a plate and set it up on your counter that you got to walk by. And if you can successfully make it a full day without just licking it all off the plate, you are not addicted to sugar. Shut up. Doesn't actually happen. It's not real. Okay, right? Not one of you have ever sucked dick in an alleyway for sugar. Right? Okay then. So just stop this nonsense. It's the hyperpalatability, which is usually high-fat foods, that are causing this. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys and gals next time.